A peace agreement is close, but what will it look like, and will it include provisions that appeal to Ukraine or satisfy Russia? Or on the contrary, will it be an agreement that neither Ukraine nor Russia will like? The peace agreement between Ukraine and Russia is currently the main topic in the world. And yet, the closer a potential agreement gets, the more frequently we hear signals that both sides will be forced to make unpleasant compromises. And in each of the key points on the prominent list, these compromises provoke rejection from the warring states. It would not be an exaggeration to say that the situation changes every 2 or 3 hours, as yet another major American or European global media outlet publishes a so-called insider report that completely contradicts the previous one. And yet it cannot be denied that peace negotiations have never moved as quickly since the start of the full-scale war as they are now. How does Trump plan to persuade Putin to end the war, and what compromises might Ukraine and Russia potentially be willing to make? Hello, everyone. My name is Anastasiia Husarieva, and now I will tell you everything that is currently known about this peace plan. In the meantime, make sure to subscribe, hit the like button, and of course let us know in the comments what you think about all these leaks and discussions that are circulating right now. So let's get started. The first compromise option suggests that Russian troops will not be stationed on the territory of Donbas, from which, hypothetically speaking, Ukrainian forces would withdraw after the agreement is signed. For example, Russian presidential aide Yuri Ushakov stated that as part of possible peace agreements, there may eventually be neither Ukrainian nor Russian troops left on the territory of Donbas. According to the Kremlin's position, order is to be maintained by units of the Russian National Guard and Russian police. Explaining his view, Ushakov states that, in his words, Donbas will sooner or later come under full Russian control, either as a result of negotiations or by military means. He emphasized that, in his opinion, this very factor will be decisive for all other decisions related to resolving the situation. Speaking about a possible ceasefire, Ushakov explained that, in his view, it is only possible after the withdrawal of Ukrainian troops from the territory of Donbas. At the same time, according to him, the future arrangement of the region may become a subject of separate discussion. He allowed for the possibility that there would be no regular military units from either side present in this territory, but the order and functioning of civilian life would be ensured by the Russian National Guard, police, and other Russian structures necessary for administration and security. Ushakov also stated that Volodymyr Zelensky opposed the withdrawal of Ukrainian troops from Donbas and described this issue as one of the demands that, according to him, was put forward to Zelensky by the United States of America. At the same time, he emphasized that regardless of possible scenarios for the development of events, the Kremlin considers Donbas as territory of the Russian Federation, which will remain under the control of Russian administrations. And in his words, it is only a matter of time. Ushakov's statements came after Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said that, as part of discussions on a peace plan involving the United States of America, the option of creating a free economic zone is being considered. According to President Zelensky, the American side consistently uses exactly this precise wording, while the Russian side, on the other hand, interprets the very same approach as a demilitarized zone, a buffer area. Zelensky also reported that the U.S. is proposing an option in which Ukrainian troops must leave the areas of Donbas under their control, while Russia, for its part, commits not to advance further into this territory. At the same time, he drew attention to the issue of balance, stating that in such a situation it is logical to ask why, if one side withdraws, the other should not also retreat by a comparable distance. And the compromise on Moscow's part would be that units of the armed forces of the Russian Federation, according to one of the variations of the peace plan and as the Ukrainian president mentioned, would withdraw from the territories of Dnipropetrovsk, Kharkiv, and Sumy regions. As for the occupied territories of the Kherson and Zaporizhzhia regions, according to Zelensky, Russia refuses to leave its positions in these areas. Kherson, Zaporizhzhia, their position is no, they will not withdraw and will stay where they are. That's how it is today. I'm simply stating a fact, the head of state said. And then there's the Zaporizhzhia Nuclear Power Plant. What will happen to it? One of the most difficult points of contact in the peace agreement is the Zaporizhzhia Nuclear Power Plant. For obvious reasons, both sides of the war do not want to give up such an important facility. That is why the United States of America came up with the most effective option, to divide the plant into two parts. Yes, Zelensky stated that the United States is proposing to consider a joint management format for the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. However, at this point, it remains unclear what kind of consortium might be responsible for its further operation. The president explained that the American side insists on a model of joint management of the plant. At the same time, according to him, Ukraine's position remains quite straightforward. He noted that if the United States is able to take control of the Zaporizhzhia Nuclear Power Plant and ensure the demilitarization of the surrounding area, which would involve the withdrawal of Russian troops to a certain distance from the facility, then there will be an opportunity to restore Ukraine's access to the plant. After that, as the president emphasized, it will then be possible to move on to discussing the mechanisms for managing and operating the facility. According to the head of state, Ukraine considers the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant to be its property, while the Russian side, he said, proceeds from the logic that under occupation the plant belongs to them. Zelensky emphasized that if the Americans do indeed take control of the nuclear power plant, then the nature of their involvement in managing the facility will become clear. In such a scenario, he noted, the American share would be expressed through influence and funding, while the Ukrainian side would retain its share of responsibility and rights. At the same time, the president, speaking publicly, emphasized that as of today, the question remains open as to what exactly the format of the consortium for managing the plant might be, how all of this could be implemented in practice, how to restart the operation of the nuclear power plant, and who will carry out the day-to-day management. According to him, it is currently quite difficult to provide clear answers to these questions. For his part, the Director General of the International Atomic Energy Agency, Rafael Grossi, stated that if a peace agreement is reached between Russia and Ukraine, it will be necessary to establish a special status for the occupied Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. What exactly this entails, of course, we will still hear from Grossi, I think. And one of the most important and most unpleasant points for Russia is the transfer of frozen assets to Ukraine, which will help the country restore its infrastructure after the war and invest in future development, compensating for 4 years of crisis. The documents supplementing the peace plan of the President of the United States of America, Donald Trump, provide for the unfreezing of Russian assets located in the territory of the European Union and their subsequent transfer to American financial and other companies for the implementation of projects in Ukraine. This was reported on December 10th by the American publication The Wall Street Journal. They refer to unnamed sources in the United States of America and Europe. According to these materials, one of the key projects under consideration is the construction of a large data processing center in Ukraine. It is assumed that it will be powered by electricity generated at the aforementioned Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. The annexes to Trump's peace plan also set out the so-called general vision of the United States of America regarding the recovery of the Russian economy from the crisis. It mentions possible investments by American companies in strategically important sectors of the Russian economy, including the development of rare earth deposits and drilling oil wells in the Arctic. In addition, the United States expresses its willingness to facilitate Russia's return to the European and global energy markets. One of the senior European officials who was intimately familiar with these confidential White House plans commented extensively to the prestigious Wall Street Journal that the significant documents vividly reminded him of the historic Yalta agreements, which were formally concluded after the devastating World War II, and which definitively defined the comprehensive division of Europe into distinct spheres of influence among the victorious Allied countries. And the press secretary of the Russian president, Dmitry Peskov, commenting on the Wall Street Journal publication about the United States' intentions to facilitate Russia's return to the global economy, stated on December 11th that the Russian Federation is interested in attracting foreign investment. At the same time, European countries have their own approach to the use of Russian assets frozen within the territory of the European Union. Last week, the European Commission proposed to provide Ukraine with a so-called reparations loan secured by the frozen assets of the Central Bank of Russia. As reported by the Financial Times, about 90 billion euros are planned to be allocated for these purposes over the next 2 years. The total amount of Russian assets frozen in the EU is estimated at approximately 210 billion euros. Formally, these funds have not been confiscated, but their return to Russia is only possible after reparations are paid to Ukraine. For its part, Ukraine could use the reparations payments received from Russia to repay the loan provided by the European Union. Earlier, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, commenting on media reports about the possible transfer of frozen Russian assets to the United States, rejected such a scenario. According to him, these funds should be directed to Ukraine. And as reported by Reuters on December 4th, Merz emphasized that Ukraine needs help to get through the winter and will likely require financial support for the next 2 to 3 years. For this, he noted significant resources are needed. The Chancellor stated that he considers this issue to be an internal European matter and does not see any economic grounds for transferring the allocated funds to the United States of America. He also mentioned, by the way, that the American government is aware, and added, in fact, that the American government is aware of this position. According to the Wall Street Journal, implementing the American proposals in their current form could jeopardize Europe's plans to support the Ukrainian government during the war and to maintain the economic isolation of Russia. According to several sources cited by the publication, this could lead to a kind of race in which European countries will try to get ahead of the United States before Washington is able to agree on and implement its own arrangements. At this point, it can be stated with confidence that despite active attempts to resolve the war, the topic of negotiations will definitely remain relevant for at least several more months. Although insiders are already naming a new Trump date, a symbolic day by which the American president would like to sign an agreement between Ukraine and Russia, or at least reach some kind of compromise. According to the latest information from journalists, Trump intends to end the war by Christmas, that is, by December 25th. So there is no doubt that in the next 2 weeks, even more insider information will emerge. So consequently, we will undoubtedly have more than just one compelling reason to thoroughly discuss and meticulously analyze both the proposed peace plan and the intricate details of Trump's various plans, and of course, most significantly and importantly, what our collective future will ultimately be like for all of us. Take care of yourselves, wash your hands with soap, and we'll see each other in our next broadcasts. Bye-bye, everyone.